Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today to showcase our Gender Equity Accreditation Program specific to the nuclear industry in Canada. This webinar is hosted by Canadian Equality Consulting and Women in Nuclear Canada. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. And before we get started, we'll kick it off with introductions. So my name is Marcy Hronik. My pronouns are she and her. And I'm founder and president of Canadian Equality Consulting, and I'm based out in Western Canada, Treaty 7 territory, or otherwise known as Calgary. Really excited to partner with WIN Canada on this incredible initiative today. And my background is in the international human rights field with a focus on conflict resolution. But I've worked and started Canadian Equality Consulting for about 10 years ago now. So have been involved in gender equity, gender mainstreaming, human rights through international nonprofits, through the UN Human Rights Council, and also now as a social enterprise working with workplaces. So I'll pass it to Priya to introduce herself as well.
Thanks, Marcy. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm sure a few more people will sort of trickle in as we get started. So my name is Priya Malik, and I'm the Women in Nuclear Canada Vice President. And I also, in my day job, I work as a senior manager at Kinetrix, which is, again, in the nuclear industry. So really excited that you could join us today, and excited to talk to you about the program, the accreditation, what that entails. And any time you have any questions, please let us know. We are, we want to make this as informative as possible for you, so you can take all the information that you need for your organization. Thank you, and over to you, Marcy.
Thank you. So before we go into logistics, a little bit about us and the program, we wanted to begin to recognize the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we're on today. So from coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this nation home. And in the spirit of reconciliation, I'd like to acknowledge that I live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, as well as Stoney Nakoda nations, and the Otopemiswak Métis government of the Métis Nation within Alberta District 6, and all people who make their homes in Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta.
And I would like to acknowledge that I'm located on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, and Anishinaabe. Thank you.
Okay, so before we get started, we just wanted to share a few webinar logistics. So this webinar is closed captioned. If you'd like your captioning on, please do the following. All you have to do is in your Zoom bar, there's sometimes either directly a closed captioning button, or you may have to click on the kind of settings icon and tap on closed captioning. And then you may have to toggle to turn it on or to enable it, and you can choose your language as well. And you can adjust the text size with a slider bar. So that's one key logistical element for the webinar. Also, we're going to be monitoring the chat throughout the webinar, but also the Q&A box. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, you don't have to wait till the end. You click the Q&A button in your Zoom menu bar, and you can input in any questions you have in there at any time. And Priya and I both have access to that, so we'll be keeping an eye on that and checking on it. And we may kind of thread in questions if they relate to the content we're presenting, or then we might save them for the end to share with everyone. But don't hesitate to do that. Also, feel free to use the chat function. The chat function is great to add in comments. So if you have comments or things you want to add or anything you want to share, feel free to put that in the chat box for everyone to see. But we ask that you put all questions, excuse me, in the Q&A box. All right, so to kick us off, this is a bit of background about who we are. So I mentioned I'm from Canadian Equality Consulting, and Canadian Equality Consulting is a firm that's dedicated to building better workplaces that work for everyone. So we're committed to helping organizations build inclusive, equitable, and high-performing culture. So we do this in a number of ways. We've been around since 2017. We're throughout Canada, and we provide consulting services or fractional support around organizational culture, DEI, as well as HR and employee experience. And then we have a whole wing of our company that does education. So training, e-courses, micro-learning, as well as a lot of GBA plus work. That's what we do in a nutshell. And I'll pass it to Priya to talk a bit about WIN Canada.
All right, so I'm guessing some of the folks on the call already know about Win Canada, but I'm just going to go through a very high level. So Win Canada was formed in 2024. We are a member-driven organization with over 6,000 members, and it's across Canada. Our members are employed in a wide range of disciplines. At Win Canada, we have taken significant steps to address the needs of our members while supporting the Canadian nuclear industry. We've been actively engaging in conversations with women, public about the benefits of nuclear technology since our inception. And this is way before many other organizations have been doing the same. Our organization is also considered one of the leading groups in Canada that have stepped up to challenge changing the public perceptions of nuclear-related technology. We prepare our members, 6,000 plus members that I mentioned, to assist public in better understanding the industry, thereby positioning us for informed, effective, and a constructive dialogue. Thanks.
So this is an overview of our time together this morning or early afternoon. So we're going to start with why gender equity matters. And then we're going to dig into the gender balance roadmap. So some of you may be familiar with the gender balance roadmap, but if you're not, we're going to provide a brief overview of it and the history of it, which then led into the creation of the Gender Equity Accreditation Program. And then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. But again, don't hesitate to put your questions in the Q&A box at any time. All right, so why does this matter? Why does gender equity matter? So WIN Canada partnered with Canadian Equality Consulting to create this gender balance roadmap and then later feed into a meaningful accreditation program. And we did this because both organizations are committed to advancing gender equity in the nuclear industry. And this is because we know that there's a ton of plethora of benefits to advancing gender equity in organizations. And what we also know is that the majority of society supports more fair workplace practices and building collaborative and welcoming workplace cultures. So our commitment and what the data shows us is that diversity drives performance. So we've seen that companies in the top quartile for gender and racial diversity compared to their respective national industry medians are 35% more likely to have superior financial returns. Organizations with an inclusive culture are 6 times more innovative and agile. 91% of customers would switch to a more purpose-driven organization if they offered a similar product and price. 39% would leave their current employer for a more inclusive employer. And over 75% of millennial and younger job seekers use diversity as a search criteria when looking for jobs. We also know that not advancing gender equity or diversity, equity, and inclusion has a cost. The number one factor that fueled the Great Resignation was during COVID-19 pandemic and afterwards was the toxic workplace cultures. And we know that the cost of turnover is extremely expensive. It's 25% of an annual salary for a team of 100 employees with an average of around $100,000 in compensation. So we know that it's expensive not to do this work and that it benefits everyone when you do this work. Also, we know that advancing gender equity and diversity, equity, and inclusion in any organization produces a ton of benefits, not just for women or gender diverse folks, but for the entire organization. And the gender equity movement has brought about significant changes and already a lasting legacy in improving workplaces, such as the gender equity movement has driven pay equity efforts, which has helped to tighten or close wage gaps and promote fair compensation. It's also, the gender equity movement has led to more structured hiring and promotion processes in organizations to help reduce bias and favoritism and ultimately find the best talent. We also know the gender equity movement has contributed to creating flexible work arrangements and hybrid environments that benefits caregivers, disabled employees, and also others with unique needs. The movement has also created inclusive healthcare benefits and ensuring more comprehensive coverage for diverse needs like gender affirming care or fertility treatment. It's also given us parental leave for birthing mothers, for partners, for adoptive parents, and also leaves to support miscarriages. So the benefits of advancing and committing to advancing gender equity in organizations are vast and really benefit the entire organization.
Just to add to what Marcy is saying, with all the benefits just packaged together, I'm sure you've heard, and specifically in our industry, they view challenge with underrepresentation of women in the workforce. Where it sits right now, it's at 23%. So we have a long way to go. But I'm sure if we have, every organization is doing their own thing. And, with programs such as these or with support from CEC, we can certainly help moving that dial. And Women in Nuclear Canada is actually very committed in assisting organizations within the sector in their journey towards achieving gender balance. And that's why, and Marcy's going to cover a little bit later about the gender roadmap for the nuclear industry, which was done in partnership with NRCan. And we are really thrilled to have this opportunity to work with Natural Resource Canada and CEC to bring this roadmap to completion. It was a lot of work, good work put together. And also, in terms of like the benefits that was just talked about, at its core, working together, gender balance in the nuclear industry and within the organization is about bringing in different perspectives, experiences, and ways of thinking. Diversity is, we've read through research and heard many, many times now that encourages us to look at things differently. It helps us to improve the work, helps us create a stronger ourselves and fairer workplaces. So the benefits for the industry, it's not just that, it's also to the whole country and entire world. So just we want you to kind of think about it from that lens as we move on and talk more about the badge process.
Thank you. And to build off of that, gender equity is going to continue to matter going forward as well. So it's really important right now, but we also know that the importance is going to continue because the diversity in Canada is rapidly increasing. This requires gender equity and DEI supports in place as companies navigate more diversity in their companies and also in their consumer or customer base. And to be able to navigate conflict and to be able to retain a rapidly diversing workforce as we navigate society's most complex challenges. What we know is that by 2041, the population of Canada will be significantly more diverse than it is today. Diversity will impact all aspects of our work and our daily lives. So by 2041, these statistics are from Statistics Canada. The population is projected to be about 47.7 million people and just over 50%. So just over kind of 1 in 2 people, over 50% of the population will be newcomers or first generation children of immigrants. 2 in 5 people will belong to racialized groups. 3.2 million people will be Indigenous, and Indigenous populations have the highest growth rate in the country. 12% of the population will be part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, which triples the current number. But there's a caveat here because we know this statistic is vastly underreported, so it's probably significantly higher than that. Also, over a quarter of the population, 26%, will be retirees. So we know we have a growing aging population, and Canadians over 85 years of age are going to triple. And retirement ages are pushing later and later. We also know 50% of people by the age 40 will have or had mental health challenges, which is the leading cause of disability worldwide. So you can find these statistics at Statistics Canada. But it's just, we wanted to include this to reinforce the importance that gender equity and DEI is going to continue to need to be at kind of the forefront of your mind and embedded into your work in order to be successful, not only in the work that you do, the people you aim to serve, but also for your internal workforce and the success. Okay. So here we go. So let's start with a bit of the story in the background. So some of you may be familiar with the Gender Balance Roadmap. We included a QR code there at the bottom of the screen that will take you directly to it if you want to learn more about it. But essentially, WIN Canada has a plethora of knowledge and a strong pulse on the experience of women working in the nuclear industry. But what they wanted to know more about through this study and this roadmap was how were the companies where the women worked supporting them? What were the barriers that impeded their success, and how were companies or organizations addressing those? So WIN Canada members have expressed to them also that they want to increase gender equity in their organizations and want to increase the representation of women at all levels, but continually shared that they weren't sure exactly how to do it or where to start. So just before this, also alongside, the Equal by 30 campaign by NRCan was launched and was also gaining traction throughout the industry. And the companies that were interested in participating also in the Equal by 30 campaign also weren't sure in the nuclear industry, weren't sure how they would meet those goals set by the program. So that's when WIN stepped in and took leadership. And they partnered with us, Canadian Equality Consulting, to create this gender balance roadmap. And this was created in cooperation with women, executives, HR professionals in the nuclear industry, and was designed to meet the unique needs of this growing and evolving and rapidly diversifying industry. So the roadmap includes a self-assessment for a key person in the organization to complete. And it helps you assess kind of where you're at in terms of gender equity and diversity, equity, and inclusion. But not only does it include that, it also then includes, once you identify where you're at, it links that to specific recommendations on how you tangibly can improve. And it also includes KPIs for you on how to measure it and exactly how to collect the data in order to measure it over time. So it's quite all-encompassing, and it's really intended to help the nuclear industry improve the representation of women and non-binary people in all their diversity within the industry. So it includes not only actions you can take, but it also has a number of support materials to help you identify, where your organization exists on a gender equity maturity model, and how to tangibly move to the next level. So this roadmap was initially launched and announced at the WIN conference 2 years ago with great success. There was a lot of interest by companies across the industry, and it's completely free to access on WIN's website. So you can go to it anytime, you can use the self-assessment, identify where you're at and where you need to improve. And the self-assessment includes these core pillars or benchmarks, as you can see on the screen. So it covers everything from attraction and education, strategic vision, recruitment, retention, advancement. It does have pay equity in there too. I saw a question in the chat. Advocacy and outreach, strategic vision, culture, learning and development. So it's pretty all-encompassing. And also, it's independent from the Equal by 30 campaign, but it's aligned with it. So the goal was for WIN and us, Canadian Equality Consulting, to support companies in the nuclear industry with this sort of customized, tailor-made tool for the industry to help you achieve your Equal by 30 goals, okay? Or even just your DEI and gender equity goals outside of Equal by 30, but it will help contribute towards it. Anything you want to add, Priya? Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I think, it kind of like gives you a really a good sort of overview of what the roadmap includes, how we kind of got here. It's been, as we mentioned, it's been 2 years into the making. We launched 2 years ago. We've had organization. We did a pilot as well with NWMO, and it was a very successful pilot. And I'm sure we're going to talk about a little bit more on how you can get on this journey as well. But we do understand that the language and the systems are constantly evolving. So with that in mind, we do want to make sure that, we all understand that intent of this roadmap is it's a living document, so that we can reevaluate it, update on the regular basis to ensure that each group continues to feel represented in this approach. And we did take a good scan when we did put together a roadmap, of all the representation, right? So we do, and if as we evolve, if things change, we will revisit this, revise it, and make it available for whoever is going through the back journey. So that's another key piece on the living document.
Wonderful. So then after the gender balance roadmap was created, as Priya said, we piloted it, but then it led into the creation of a Gender Equity Accreditation Program, which is more than a badge. It's really a commitment to building a stronger, more inclusive, forward-thinking workplace. So by participating in this accreditation program that I'll explain shortly, your organization has the unique opportunity to work directly with us, Canadian Equality Consulting. We're a national leader in DEI and gender equity, and we're proud to be recognized as a top 10 DEI firm in the world by HR Magazine, and to have been named Best Supportive Workplace Culture for 3 consecutive years by Canada Business. And we've also been recognized by UN Women for our innovative approaches to advancing gender equity. We're really excited to continue this relationship with WIN and to work with nuclear industry companies. But what really sets this program apart is its data-driven approach. So through this accreditation process, you'll receive accurate, comprehensive DEI data on the current state of your organization. So it will give you a really clear and honest picture of where you stand to essentially validate your self-assessment, but in a much more granular, evidence-based way. And then from there, we provide you with more tailored, more customized recommendations on how to tangibly advance gender equity and inclusion in ways that are realistic and impactful for your unique workplace culture and industry context. So I'll go into exactly how this is done next, but you can kind of see how this builds off of the roadmap. So we created the roadmap with that self-assessment tool that gives some recommendations on how to advance with KPIs and measurement ideas. But this is really a way to validate those findings, give you more granular data, and kind of partner with you and work with you to really customize those recommendations so that they're realistic and make sense for you, so that they align with your strategic plan or your company's priorities, right? So it's not an add-on. So this will help your organization. So the benefits of participating in an accreditation program really is to help you build your trust and your reputation. It allows you to share publicly if you like. All of the findings are confidential. We share them with you, but it's up to you whether you want to share them publicly. But you'll receive a recognition badge to help bolster kind of trust and reputation, show where you meet in this standard. This also gives you the data you need to continually measure progress and benchmark your progress as well.
I think I just want to stress on the piece, Marcy, that you mentioned. All this is the organization choice. If you want to be public, if you want to publicly declare that you're doing this badge accreditation, it's totally your choice. If you want to keep it more private to the organization, and depending on how far you're into the process. So when you start this process with CEC, again, WIN Canada, there is no way for us to, we don't really get involved into declaring which organizations are going through for this year. But if each other, everything creates competition. So if organizations are interested, we certainly are happy to share that information. So it's your call. You don't have to decide in the beginning. If you decided at the end too that you do want to do that, totally, that's feasible. And we also have opportunity at Women in Nuclear Conference, which is such a big conference for within the industry. If you want to get recognized as an organization and people look up to your organization as I want to work there. So I think that's also something that to keep in mind, that is private. It can be very private or it can be totally public, however you decide to go.
Yeah, exactly. Great clarification. And if you choose to go public, like we want to help celebrate you. We want to recognize your achievements and your hard work. Okay, so let's talk a bit about what is the accreditation? What does it look like? What are these levels I've been referring to? So this accreditation results in a system of recognition badges that are awarded to your company or organization who meets various DEI metrics of success. However, to ensure organizations are making measurable progress, right, and not simply paying lip service to the goals of the roadmap, we've created a assessment process before you receive a badge. So you do the self-assessment, then you go through a short assessment process with us, and then we award you a badge. So this is, again, I mentioned something just for your internal organization only. It's about supporting you in your journey, not necessarily to showcase externally, but we do want to celebrate and recognize all of your hard work if you're open to that. This accreditation process really aims to be a nuclear industry standard. So this is going to become a way to evaluate and recognize companies in the same industry in the same way. So while the focus of the gender balance roadmap was initially designed to improve the participation of women in the nuclear industry, inspired by the Equal by 30 campaign, other identity factors are also considered in this process, right? So intersectionality is critically important in the self-assessment tool and in this accreditation kind of validation process. So throughout each stage of the accreditation process, we'll consider the experiences and barriers for women and non-binary people in all of their diversity and equity deserving populations, because we acknowledge the importance of considering these perspectives and the experiences of folks from an intersectional lens. So what does each level here mean? So we have 3 levels. The first level is blue, and this signifies that the organization recognizes the importance of gender equity and DEI, but probably lacks a formal plan. So this type of organization is at the beginning of their journey. They're starting to raise awareness about the importance of this topic. They acknowledge the need for an inclusive culture, and they've just started their kind of learning and development journey. Silver is our middle tier, which signifies that the organization has taken initial steps toward advancing gender equity and also in the recruitment of women and equity deserving population. So this type of organization has established goals and already begun implementing initiatives to increase representation and inclusion. And they already have demonstrated some progress in achieving them. They also promote gender equity and DEI externally and participate or engage in outreach programs. They're more active in addressing barriers that prevent exclusion, and they have active L&D programs. Okay, but there's usually still some room for improvement in creating measurable outcomes, ensuring holistic DEI integration, and to achieve broader gender balance across all levels. And then lastly, there's the platinum level, which signifies that the organization is a leader in gender equality, gender equity, and DEI. So this organization integrates the representation of women and other equity deserving groups into all strategic decisions. They're a leader in the industry. They attract, they advance women, they shape industry-wide gender equity initiatives. They have representation, they've met their goals, and they're maintaining them. And they're recognized for their culture and for their learning and development opportunities for women and other groups as well. So that's just a really high-level overview of each of the 3 levels. But now I'm going to go into how does this process, what's the process look like? How does it work? So it starts with an application. So this application is available through WIN Canada. And I'll put a QR code up on a future slide where you can go straight to the place on the website where you can access this. But essentially it starts with a streamlined short application, which takes maybe 20 minutes to complete. The application itself contains a series of multiple choice questions and optional open-ended text boxes. And it's designed to capture detailed information about the actions your organization has taken around gender equity, DEI, and also the Equal by 30 initiative. Once you submit that, and you can attach documents to it, right? So if you have a DEI or gender equity plan or policy, you attach that in there. But after the application is submitted, then Canadian Equality Consulting will reach out to you. And depending on the level that you're applying for, so you could apply for blue, silver, or platinum, up to you. But once you submit your application, we'll reach out, and then there's different areas of the assessment that will undergo with you. So if you're applying for a lower level badge, it includes a couple consultations. So we'll chat with you, a couple key members in your organization, just to verify and get some information on where you land in the criteria to help inform the badge process. If you're applying for a higher badge, it includes a survey. So we'll actually create and conduct an organizational survey for you in order to get that data to verify. And then we go from there. And then we create a comprehensive report for you with the data that was collected through consultations, potentially a survey, potentially a policy document review, depending on the level you're applying for. And then we give you this detailed report with data assessing where you're at, and then with concrete recommendations. So by this point in the assessment process, we know your organization really well. We've familiarized ourselves with your strategic plan. We've spoken to you multiple times, and we're able to give you really concrete recommendations that we also co-create with you to make sure they're realistic and make sense for your company to help you also achieve those goals. So that's what you'll receive. And then we give a badge recommendation. And WIN awards the badge to you. So we submit all of this data and information to you. We submit the badge recommendation to WIN. And then WIN will officially award you with a physical and a digital badge. So if you apply for, let's say, a blue badge, which we've had this happen in the pilot, but we think you're actually more advanced than maybe you think you are, we'll give you a higher badge. If you apply for a higher badge and you don't necessarily meet all the criteria, but you do the silver badge, then we'll still award you the silver badge. So we work with you to kind of find where you're at, even if you're not totally sure. It's a collaboration to make sure that we recognize and can celebrate where you're at. Also, once you're awarded this badge, then we like to do check-ins. So after the badge is awarded, we'll check in with you periodically to see how things are going. Are the recommendations working? How are you finding things? Is there anything we can help with? We'll also do more of a formal check-in about 1 year later to see how the momentum is going, if there's anything you need support with. But you're also able to then reapply for a higher badge at any time. You don't necessarily have to wait for that 1 year check-in. If you're going through the recommendations fast, you're achieving your goals, you can also seek a higher badge level at any time. So we're often also asked how long this assessment process takes. So from the start of the application to awarding the accreditation badge, we want to make this easy for you. So we've streamlined the process. So if you're applying for a blue badge, typically it shouldn't take longer than about a month. If you're applying for a higher level, like a platinum, it can take up to 4 to 5 months. Because those levels, if for larger organizations, will require like an organizational survey and a deeper intersectional analysis. But so it fluctuates depending on the level that you're applying for and the size of organization that you are. So even if you're applying for a higher badge, but you're a smaller org, it can take less time. So I'd say anywhere between 1 month to about 5 months, depending on the badge level.
Just a thought, Marcy, maybe want to expand on that is like, I know we mentioned about the gender roadmap provides a self-assessment tool. So let's say if an organization have already started doing the self-assessment tool, used it, that wouldn't help them. That would just help them give, I guess, a good picture of where they are. But in order to do the badge and where you sit in the color scheme, then CEC, this is where the expertise comes in, where if you have already done it, that work has not gone waste. They can certainly leverage that so that you're not starting from again and you're not wasting, your time that you've already spent to do a self-assessment. So I would, just want to mention that you can certainly transfer that over to the CEC team. They will do an overview again, ask some questions, do a meeting. The whole goal is, even the timeline is built in, and it may sound like, oh, that's a lot of commitment. This is not a full-time commitment we are looking for. It's pretty much a touch point where CC does the heavy loading, like they do the heavy lift of the actual badge. Each of the classifications, and where we want, your expertise would be to supply the documentation, just do more of a data dump, so that, or a brain dump of where you are, and then they take it away kind of thing. So the timeline is, can certainly vary. If you already have everything available, just transfer it over, and that can be very quick.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so this outlines the associated cost, and this is the cost of your initial assessment for your initial badge. So the pricing breakdown is according to the size of your organization, but also the level of the badge that you're applying for, because we understand that capacity and resources vary significantly according to the size of an organization. And we want organizations with under 50 people that maybe don't have an internal HR position or anyone leading DEI initiatives to be ultimately just as successful as companies with a full HR or DEI team with over 500 employees. We want this to be a really fair, equitable process for all of you. So we've outlined the 3 levels of badges here, and the costs associated with each are discounted by approximately at least 25% from what you would pay in the market if you sought out a similar assessment process elsewhere. And it's discounted because it's more efficient and timely and cost effective to have us as an external third party complete the assessment than to necessarily rely on your own internal capacity. And it provides greater credibility to use an external third party that's as reputable as CEC. And we've worked with WIN over the past 3 years and have a deep understanding of the nuclear industry, and have developed these processes and methodologies and templates for review. So it's efficient for us that's why we're able to discount it for folks, to ensure that, to encourage organizations to seek out and to complete this accreditation. And what really makes this accreditation process distinct is that it's a nuclear specific and nuclear industry specific standard for the industry. So the self-assessment tool, as well as this accreditation process, is going to be tailored to you. And the recommendations we give are based on the data and the evidence that you share, including the self-assessment. If you haven't completed that gender balance roadmap self-assessment, that's okay too. It's not a prerequisite to enter into this accreditation process. But if you have it, we'll definitely make sure there's no duplication in the process to save you time and effort. But it's a really fantastic program that we're really excited to share with WIN Canada. And there's recertification options as well. So this pricing on this chart is really your kind of initial certification, your initial accreditation piece. And then a year later to recertify or to maintain your current badge, it's a much shorter, streamlined process that's also significantly discounted. So this is like kind of the upfront investment for the initial review. Okay. So we wanted to incentivize participation and to reduce some financial barriers. So here's a QR code that will take you to the WIN website. where the accreditation information is posted, and with contact information on who to connect with to receive the application. So for any of you attending today, if you sign up within the next 30 days, we'll give you an additional 10% off, because we want to reduce any financial barriers as much as possible and encourage folks to really participate and be able to recognize and celebrate your gender equity and DEI achievements across the industry.
And I think just to add a little bit more, this is obviously, 45 minutes webinar. Sometimes it's not enough for you to kind of grasp everything that's available, just because there's some technical elements involved in sense of like there's a roadmap report. So if you want to take this back to your organization with the information that you've taken through from this webinar, we are happy to connect with you again. If, for example, you're presenting it to executive team and you want some more information for that, to put your case together, we're happy to support in any way we can, just because we do want to make sure that, like Marcy was saying, this is sort of an industry standard, and we want to make sure that we are recognizing and kind of making it as a more standard practices of everyone following it, so that we can speak the same sort of terminology, we can walk the same, walk the talk kind of thing. So so that's also very important on why Women in Nuclear is involved in this. Is we want to create everyone from the same baseline, same foundation, and sort of grow from there.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so now let's shift. We have some time for questions and answers. So take a moment, if you have any questions at all, click on that Q&A box in the Zoom menu bar, and feel free to type them in, and Priya and I will go through them. I see there's some in the chat already, so I'll start with those, but as I'm talking, please continue to ask them in the Q&A box. So there's a question around the Pay Equity Act, and how WIN can be more involved to make sure the act is properly implemented. So pay equity is one of the components in that's in the Gender Balance Roadmap self-assessment tool, and also in the accreditation sort of assessment process. So that's something that we look at within an organization, even in the level blue, so the base level for accreditation. There's questions that ask about pay equity, that ask about pay equity policies and the implementation of them and where you're at. And then as you get to the higher levels, we also look at, we can also ask questions around data on that, and also employee perceptions around pay equity. So a little bit of both. So it's a key component of that process, which will then help us create tailored recommendations to folks to make sure that they're implementing it and ultimately measure it and be held accountable around it. And then the next question was around mental health. And I talked a bit about how this process covers more than women. It covers women, gender diverse folks, and also intersectionality and other equity deserving populations. So we did talk about mental health and also disability. But there's a question around, is there a study that we know of that identifies what degree economical, financial, and social chaos affects, how it affects each group, who's the most vulnerable, and how they can be protected? An excellent question, and definitely a key topic right now in the world. I can't think of any study that comes to mind off the top of my head, but I will share that after this webinar, we will share out the deck and some resources, and we have an FAQ document also on this process. So, but I'll do some digging and happy to include that. Anything you'd add, Priya?
I think, like you said, like it was thought through, right? Our process of creating that roadmap. And there was a lot of consultation, like with an experts like your organization, you kind of bring that wealth of information, and then key players from the nuclear industry, just to sort of walk through the big issues, the challenges, what we do well, what we don't. So we did build on that, and there's a lot of considerations for different categories, different groups of people. I feel like the study that you're talking about is great. It will be great, beneficial to everybody, but I'm sure individuals you can find that, but as a comprehensive piece for including everybody, that is big undertaking. So, if you can find something, certainly we should share with each other because that can be very helpful. But I haven't heard anything on the top of my head here.
Okay, excellent. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions come in the chat or the Q&A box.
If you want to,
Mhm.
I would add, if you want to share, um, you know, your journey, like how your organization is doing, we're happy to hear that too. But if you don't want to publicly share it, that's totally fine. Or if you want to talk about some of the challenges, this is Women in Nuclear Canada, like I mentioned, like our goal is to make sure we educate people, we make sure that public is informed, and we do it through various programs, and this is one of the programs. So, if you want to share any of your insights, please, let us know. So we'll stick around, I guess, for another minute or two, and then, Marcy, if you're okay, we can, close it off.
Mhm.
Like we said, we will be sending this over, so you have, and you have availability to talk to Marcy and myself anytime. So please reach out if you're, just walking through in your head too and have further clarifications you require.
Excellent. Okay, we'll still stay on the line for a couple more minutes in case there's any last questions, but we just want to thank you for those able to join. We appreciate you being a part of this session. We've recorded this as well to be able to send out the recording to anyone that missed it. But you can see our contact information at the bottom here. So like Priya said, don't hesitate to reach out with any questions.
And just to close it off, I kind of want to add through that adopting the roadmap or even start to thinking about adoption of the roadmap kind of signals to employees in your organization that you care, not just about the outputs that they produce, but also about how they produce those outputs, and caring about people, who are the core of the organization, presents tremendous benefits for everybody. So, we want to make sure that if not today, do think about it and how you can, be part of this whole process and adopt it, and help sort of transform the nuclear industry for Canada in this topic. So it's very important and it's very close to and dear to all of participants. And I'm sure we've all kind of come across some things. So think it through. And we just wanted to. This session was all about information. So hopefully you've got what you needed. And again, happy to kind of connect at any time. So thank you so much for taking your lunch hour and listening to us here. And thank you, Marcy, for spending not your lunch hour, because she's based in Calgary, and kind of talking through the details of this program so that we can give a little bit more of history on how it came about. So thanks for your time.